The King James was not let down on a string from heaven. Right. It's a very beautiful version.
I've been following you for a while, and I've listened to your book, Stealing from God.
Yes.
And I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, but I haven't listened to it yet. But my question is in regards to the fact that you are so given over to the fact that there is objective truth, which I totally stand behind. And my question is, have you ever looked into the King James only position, and what is your stance on that? Because I believe that to believe in objective truth, that, like, I'm King James only in the sense that I believe in that version and then the English versions that came before it, and I believe that there are other translations in other languages that are valid, but like these modern translations, the ones that come after the King James, that they're corrupt and they have contradictions in them, and that they have things in them that make the Bible sound silly or that are just false. And so I wanted to know what your stance on that was.
What were those contradictions? Can you name any of them that would cause people to say the King James is right and say the NIV is wrong?
So like in the ESV, it says where 𝗣𝗢𝗓𝗓, the son of Elhanan, killed Goliath, when everyone knows that David killed Goliath. And so like the NIV, in the beginning of Daniel, where the Pharaoh, or you know, like how he says, like, I need someone to come explain to me my dream. Okay. In the King James, he says that I don't remember what my dream is, and I need you to tell me what my dream is, and then the interpretation. But in the NIV, he's just like, I'm just not going to tell you, as if he's being obstinate rather than forgetful. And then, like, the word Lord is removed a lot of times. Hell is removed entirely out of the Old Testament in the NIV. In John 3:16, how it says that the only begotten Son of God, that's Jesus. But in like these modern versions, it takes out begotten, and it says that Jesus is God's only Son. Well, that's a contradiction, because in Hebrews it says that everyone who believes is a son of God. And so Jesus is not God's only Son, he's just the only begotten of the Father. And so like things like that. And
okay.
Then,
well, I'm not a Hebrew or a Greek scholar, but I know many people who are, and the point is that there is both a science and an art to translations. And there's also different manuscripts that are used from the King James to the more modern translations, because we've discovered so many more manuscripts since 1611. So scholars now can look at manuscripts and say, we were unsure about this particular reading, but now we're more sure because we have these other manuscripts. And that might be some of the reason for the differences between, say, the King James and the NIV, which I call the nearly inspired version, or the ESV or the NASB. But the King James was not let down on a string from heaven. Right. It's a very beautiful version, but there are things in the King James that if you read it with current English usage, you'll get the opposite idea of what the word is saying. Like, for example, in 1611, the word let meant restrain. Today, it means exactly the opposite. It means to allow. So if you read the King James, there's a place, I think, in 1st or 2nd Thessalonians, where it uses the word let. And if you read it now, you're going to think, oh, it's allow, when in reality, it should mean restrain. Okay. So words have different usages as time goes on. And so updated translations help keep abreast of the current usage. So when you read it, you can understand what God really meant. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just as far as the manuscript issue. So the King James is translated from a handful of manuscripts, but like modern translators have way earlier manuscripts to go on. And so like, what do you do? What do you do if there's something in a 10th century manuscript and it actually has a different meaning from like a 4th century manuscript? What do you do? Do you say, well, this is kind of what people went with in the King James, or do you go with what it seems like is an earlier reading? So like take the John 3:16 as an example. So the Greek word's monogenes, which can mean, depending on which kind of like derivation you go with, can mean begotten or it can mean unique. The word as it appears can mean either one. So, I think it's begotten, but I can understand why someone would say, well, actually, it's just like you can translate it as unique. So it's like, where are you putting the authority? In sort of a translation that you're raised on and you've heard all your life, and then all of a sudden someone comes along and they come up with a translation that says, that says something different. Well, if they're just making it up, that's one thing. Then you would say, yeah, get out of here with that. Just get out of here with that. If you're saying, well, this is a meaning of the word, and so we're going to translate it like this because we think that was the original intent. That's not just someone just saying, hey, we're going to corrupt and change this and so on. So there are translations that would be like ideologically driven, like, New World Translation or something like that. I think most of the modern translations, they're not saying, hey, let's twist this and let's twist Scripture and let's corrupt the gospel and so on. They're going back to earlier manuscripts and trying to come up with the best translation, and that will to be perfectly clear. The King James Bible is one of the great works of all of literature of all time. But as Frank pointed out, this wasn't like this was guys in a room translating with the manuscripts they had available to us, and I think it makes perfect sense as people. As time goes on and they find earlier manuscripts and they learn more about, first century usage of terms, that they would kind of apply that to their translations.